going on, people? This is the Combat Source Podcast. My name is Josh, and I am coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. It is a Tuesday evening, a beautiful Tuesday evening, and this is episode number 1 of the Combat Source Podcast. I want to thank you all for joining me. This will be a weekly thing. We will try to get you weekly episodes out. And most likely the first few are going to be exclusively audio. So I'm going to tell you that right now. This is an exclusive audio podcast at the moment, but in a short while, and I will make the announcement that we will jump to a video podcast as well. So you can see my pretty mug. This is, let's see, how do I explain this? This is an offshoot. This is a rebranch. This is a rebranding. This is a spawn of the MMA Complex podcast, which I was a part of for almost 7 years. I'll say 6.5 years. I was with the MMA Complex podcast. It's something that myself started and spawned, and along with my co-host James, who helped me along the way, and we both kind of just took it by the bull horns, and in a way it was not necessarily his dream to do that, but he loved mixed martial arts as much as I did, and was along for the ride, and we did some cool things, man. We had some really cool experiences, and life just evolves. James is doing well. He's doing his thing. He's living and loving and enjoying life. But life takes us down different paths, and I wanted to continue this. I wanted to continue being in mixed martial arts and combat sports media realm. I love combat sports. I love mixed martial arts. I love boxing. I love everything. So this podcast, we're going to discuss anything and everything where people are punching each other, and yeah, that's what this podcast is all about. We're going to bring you fight announcements, pre and post fight coverage, probably event coverage as well, on location coverage if I can get around to it. Things are rocking and rolling, starting to, at least, post pandemic. And I would say if you want to get an idea of at least what I was all about and where I came from, this is it. I'm born and raised in LA, just outside of like the downtown area, in the suburban area of Los Angeles, and just an LA boy who loved combat sports, man. So I was a intern with the UFC back in 2015, probably the last year of the Zuffa era. And, from that moment on, right when I was in actually a school internship, and when that ended, I decided I wanted to start a podcast. And luckily I had a really, good friend that was along the ride with me, and we did some really cool things, man. And you can go back and look up the MMA Complex podcast and go and research some of that. We did a lot of cool things in the media realm, and we went full force. Websites, and business cards, and YouTube channels, and social media, on the spot event coverage, fighter interviews. Some of the fighters we got early on, man, and I'm really proud of that. We made it a point to really just talk to anybody and everybody, and that meant even the future stars of this sport. And I continue to see a lot of those people that we talk to making waves and getting their shine, and that's really cool to see, knowing that I got to speak with them when they were barely starting to make a name for themselves in the sport. So this will be primarily and not exclusively mixed martial arts, because this is so much of it, and I consume all of it, that This is what it's going to consist of. I will cover boxing. I will talk about boxing. I will talk about Canelo and Bivol, and I'll talk about all those, all those feature matchups because I watch those too. I don't watch a lot of the other grappling sports, but I do occasionally, and I will read up on them. But there's so much mixed martial arts and so much boxing that it's hard to get to other things. And I do watch a lot of. I love Glory Kickboxing, so I'm going to talk about Glory Kickboxing on here too. And there's a lot of other things. So I don't want to ramble on. This is a brand new, 100% homegrown podcast, man. This is something I've been bouncing around in my head since we recorded our last episodes of the MMA Complex podcast back in the summer of 2021. And now it's early 2022. I still want to do this. I still love this. And I want to get back into the game. And no better than to start fresh with a brand new podcast. And I welcome all of you to join me in this ride and see where we can take it. Let's see. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this podcast and to your friends. And if you like it, just subscribe to it on Spotify or iTunes and leave comments, leave suggestions, whatever you want to do. I'm going to be on YouTube as well. This is primarily going to be audio format for now, and eventually it's going to get to a video format component as well, added to that probably sometime next month. So right now we're going to be exclusively audio based. And I do want to thank you guys all for joining me. So make sure you like, subscribe, and let's get started. So a lot to cover this past weekend. Man, I don't want to touch too much on the Canelo fight. I saw it as, that was just Canelo trying to test his limits, and who knows how the next fight will go. He fought Andre Bivol and upper weight class. I think it was a light heavyweight, I believe. I got to read up on that. I'm not even going to speak too much about it because I don't even have it pulled up on my screen here. But, you see that all the time with fighters try to test themselves. And it's the greats that try to test themselves and the ones that get remembered. How many times do we still hear BJ Penn fighting Lyoto Machida at heavyweight? You know what I mean? And it's like, they may not succeed, but we remember those fights. We remember their attempts at greatness, and that's what really counts in this grand scheme of things. Your legacy is did you try to reach for the stars? You know what I mean? And I'd say Canelo is one of those guys that is going to be remembered for reaching the stars. He went out of his comfort zone more and more and more and consistently, and will continue to do so until he retires. And a lot of people refer to Mayweather and other fighters as being the greatest of all time or this and that. But you know what? There's not a lot of guys like Canelo, and there's not a lot of guys that are doing things like Canelo, and even currently in this new generation of boxers. So, man, he's something special. And even though he lost to Bivol, he's a fantastic fighter in his own right, and may go down as one of the greatest in his division. This is no knock on Canelo. This is just, hey, reevaluate, see what you want to do. If you want to go get a rematch, cool. If not, you got a ton of other guys that want to fight you. So you're the biggest payday in boxing. So he's good. But we're going to touch on the UFC 274. That was headlined by Charles de Bronx Oliveira against Justin Gaethje. So that was... Man, that what a controversial. I mean, man, that event will go down as one that I don't think a lot of people expected to be so many highs and lows and so controversial. And so, I mean, from the scale gate to Oliveira getting his title stripped, to all the trash talk between the two, him and Gaichi, not to mention Namajunas and Esparza and how that fight ended up turning out, and all the questions that people are asking themselves about what's going on with Rose. You know what I mean? What's going on with this fight? What's going on with the division? I mean, you had Cerrone and Lauzon getting, it was this retirement fight in a way between the two, and then that gets scrapped, and then you have it's just crazy stuff, and then you have all this outside stuff with Dana White and fighter pay and Anderson Silva talking trash, and it was an interesting week in the world of mixed martial arts, and it was very interesting. You had Bellator Paris, which is a decent event. We're not going to touch too much on that, but let's get to 274. Right into 274. Charles Bronx Oliveira defeats Justin Gaethje, and he loses his title. He just wins the match, and is not the legitimate lightweight championship. He's just not the lightweight champion, and say what you want to say about it, half pound over. It is what it is. An Arizona commission, however experienced they are, and whatever you want to say, that the guy who managed the scale, and whatever words you want to call him, man, that it is what it is. This fight was had a lot of questions to be answered. What kind of state of mind is Charles going to be in going into this fight? Can he withstand Gaethje's pressure and his power and his durability? Because we know Charles gets hit, and man, did he get hit. 2 knockdowns, and then submits him, chokes him out. Jesus, man. The Bronx says he was never one of those guys that we saw as a world beater. Skilled, had the look, but just could never really put it together in the way that the elites were as he was coming up. And man, has he put it together now. His mind, his body, his stand-up, his jiu-jitsu, everything is just working for this guy. Yeah, his chin gets rocked. He gets put in some bad spots, but man, he is durable. And I had somebody else talking to when I was watching the fight. Man, he keeps so calm under pressure now. And the knock on him was that he would fold under pressure. Not anymore, man. Not anymore. So where does that leave him? I don't want to get into the fight recap itself, but that was basically as much as I want to get into it. But we're gonna discuss what's the future for him. Is Islam Makhachev next? Is Beneil Dariush next? Is Conor McGregor next? Who should be next? The Bronx just came out recently, I think today, and said that he believed that Islam needs another win. He needs to fight Dariush. He needs that number 1 contender fight before he fights him. And the Bronx is looking to take the rest of the year off, and not, I wouldn't say the rest of the year off, but he's looking to fight in Brazil, which supposedly the UFC may go in December, and that's what he wants. And maybe he might get it. He's the thing is, he's not the champ right now. That's the problem. Is that he's basically the champ without the title. He's the number 1 contender champion. It's weird, man. It's a weird spot to be in. The sport hasn't seen it like this before, and under these circumstances. And there's some cases that are very similar, but and I've seen them all. Trust me, I've seen them all. I've been watching this sport since before Ultimate Fighter, and I haven't missed a fight since. I've seen guys come and go, man. I've seen people retire. I've seen 2 generations of fighters retire at this point. I'm 36 years old, man. I've been watching this sport since I was probably 15, and combat sports in general since before that. So, man, I feel that, Islam is the probably rightful number 1 contender in terms of just the eye test from what we've seen. He may not have the extensive resume of knocking off top competition, but he's knocked off enough top competition to really prove that this guy is a force. A lot like Chimaev in the welterweight division. Like, he just beat Gilbert Burns. With Islam and the way he's dispatched of his opponents as of late, no one, I don't think, can really see that, there's anybody else in the division that could really give him a test. So in that sense, do I think Beneil Dariush isn't really going to beat Islam Makhachev, I would put my money on Islam. I just would. I think most people would. And I think in a lot of ways, yeah, he doesn't have the top tier fighter, enough of them on his resume, but I mean, he's gotten to a point in the division that, I mean, who else is there that's really going to give this guy a test? Just give the guy his test. I mean, if you want to, his title shot, man, if you want to put him up against Chandler, I would like to see Islam against Chandler. I would like to see Islam against Gaichi. I would like to see Islam against Dustin Poirier. Those would be fun. I wouldn't be mad at those. But I don't, if you want to give him a title shot right away, then cool. But you know what? If Charles, wants to make him wait, then I guess it'll be up to him and the UFC and negotiate how that's going to happen. I don't know if that can happen. I don't know if he's got the bargaining power to make that happen. They may tell him, hey, you owe us. You owe us for this. You missed weight. Fucked up, or how controversial that scale is going to be, or that scale situation was, but you missed weight. Period. On paper, you missed weight. So it is what it is. We need you to fight Chandler. We need you to fight Dustin Poirier. We need you to fight Islam Makhachev right now. You know what I'm saying? And as far as Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler, I mean, for Islam to fight them, and then for Charles to fight Islam, or just have him fight Islam. So I don't know. I could see him if Charles Oliveira wants to make Islam wait and do a number one contender fight with somebody, then why not? Why not? I'm not mad at it. The guy's earned it. The guy's earned it to take some time off. The guy's earned it to really, pick and choose a little bit who he wants to fight. I mean, if he wants to take a money fight with Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor before giving Islam a title fight, then fuck it. Why not, man? If the UFC is willing to do it, I'm not mad at that either. You know what I mean? Do I think it's right? No. By the way, I'm drinking some Ballast Point grapefruit sculpin. So, in case I don't mean to drink on the microphone, just a little something. So, I don't know if you guys disagree or agree with me. I'm gonna go with I don't care. I don't know. I don't care. Do I agree with Nate or McGregor skipping Islam? I wouldn't be mad at seeing it. I'll be curious. I'll be happy for Charles to get those big paydays. I mean, why not, man? I couldn't be mad at Charles and to get those paydays. I mean, those are two of the biggest paydays in the sport. I mean, the biggest paydays in the sport right now are those two gentlemen. And if Charles can fight both of them, or if not one of them, I mean, he's good, man. All these other title fights or these other fighters are just gonna be chump change compared to those. So I'm not mad at that in that sense. And as in terms of, is it right? No. But is it right for Charles? Yeah. And if that means Islam has to take another fight, then Islam has to take another fight. And if they make Islam against Charles and Abu Dhabi, I'm not mad at that either. I'm not mad at any of it. This division is probably one of the best in the UFC, if not mixed martial arts in general right now. And I mean, I'm excited for it. See what happens, man. Give me your thoughts and, in the comment section below, wherever you're listening to this. If you want to hit us up on social media, if you want to hit me up on YouTube, leave your comments on YouTube. I'm going to post this on YouTube as well. iTunes, comments, whatever you want to do. I'll look them up. I'll answer your questions this next time. I'll read some of your comments and all that stuff on the next one, on the next podcast next week. So just let me know what you think. Let's see. Next on the list of what I want to talk to you guys about. Well, you already know the next one I'm going to get to. It's Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza. And here's the thing. The question I was thinking, and a lot of people are debating from what I could tell on social media and other shows. I do listen to a lot of those shows, man. I do. I gotta stop it. I got into the groove of listening to other people's shows, like Morning Combat, which those guys I love, man. And I had the pleasure of speaking to Luke Thomas back when we were doing our MMA Complex podcast. He was we were happy to have him as a guest at one point. That was awesome. Eric Hawani, I mean, you name it. Oh, all those podcasts, man. I listen to them all. I check them all out at some point. But if I'm gonna get back into this thing, I got to stop. Listening to those on a regular, because I want to have my. It's hard. You want to have your own opinions when you're doing these things, and you don't want any others. You don't want people to listen to other podcasts and hear the same stuff. You know what I mean? Like I want to bring you guys something a little bit, more unique, a little bit different. But man, was that fight the worst title fight in UFC history? Or was that one of the worst fights in UFC history? I can name 3 right now. Rose Namajunas and Esparza is definitely on that list. You could put it top 3. If you want to put it, definitely top 5 for sure. Fights in the UFC. The worst fights. As far as title fights, you could probably put it top 3. But I would say Rose Namajunas, Carlos Esparza came to mind as for worst fights in the UFC history. Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis. This is no particular order. And Kimbo Slice versus Houston Alexander. Those 3, in my mind, are some of the worst fights I've ever seen in this sport, and definitely in the UFC. Now, I'm sure there's a ton of others, and for different reasons, but those 3 come to mind as some of the worst stalemates that I've ever seen. You know what I mean? Where you just nobody wants to pull the trigger. Nobody wants to overcommit. Nobody wants to make a move where they can pay for it. And those 3 fights, especially this one in the modern era, is just probably the worst. Is it worse than Curtis Blades and Francis Ngannou? I think so, because at least in Francis Ngannou and Curtis Blades, you had the threat of the knockout. You had them swinging at each other at times. You had some action. You know what I mean? It wasn't a lot, but you had some. Houston Alexander and Kimbo Slice, probably one of the worst fights ever. Kimbo Slice versus Dada 5000 is probably another one. But Houston, that was Houston circling around Kimbo for I don't know how long. And Kimbo, just with his basic level of mixed martial arts experience, I don't know, man, just giving it to Houston in whatever way he could. But this fight is probably the worst because nobody did anything. Nobody barely committed to anything in this fight. I mean, the strike numbers on all these rounds were just horrible. It's for Namajunas versus Esparza. That was just horrible. And you could tell from, I'm not going to talk about the corner work. I'm not going to talk about all this stuff and with the contradictory attitude that she had compared to how the fight was coming out to each round. It was just kind of bizarre. From what I can see, it was that she got in her, she wanted to play it safe. She was so afraid. She doubted herself so much coming into this fight and did not want to lose to Esparza again that she played it overly safe. She was in her head, and she convinced herself in some way that she was doing something good in this fight, and she did absolutely nothing. I think she overestimated Carla's growth, I think, and she underestimated her own abilities and her own growth in this sport. And it was weird because even when she took Carla down, even when she beat Carla to the punch on her feet, even when she did all these things and showed that she was a much better fighter in all of these areas, she still was too afraid to commit to anything. and she didn't do anything. I mean, Rose dropped the ball on this one. This should have been an easy fight for her. And she should have gone in there and just mopped the floor with Carla and showed her that I am at another level than you. I have surpassed you. And she dropped the ball, man. And again, and we have seen this, when the whole, Conor and Khabib busgate, situation where Conor throws was it a dolly through the window of the bus, and Rose took almost 2 years to a year and a half off for mental anguish. She was traumatized, and I mean, we've seen her insecurities, we've seen her mental weakness, her inability to overcome certain mental challenges. And I know it's not, the nice thing to do, but I mean, her stock fell after that dolly situation with Conor, in my eyes. Like she took so much time off and played the victim. Like she was a victim of the circumstances, but I mean, you would think that he threw a dolly at her face or something like that. Like I don't know. Her as a fighter, as a professional mixed martial artist, as somebody who goes in there and gets bloody and fights somebody in a cage, for a situation like that didn't even happen, in a way that you were, disfigured or injured or I mean, it was, and who it was. It wasn't like some angry mob that was storming the bus. You know what I mean? It was this Conor. You knew why he was doing it. And it just, the stuff that was coming up in the media, and it just seemed weak to me. It seemed mentally weak. It seemed fragile. For her to have the nickname Thug Rose, she was not acting very thuggish to me. You know what I mean? And that in my eyes, her stock fell, and I think this fight really reminded me of how emotionally weak she can be. And I'm no, vault of masculinity and fucking, the weakness does not escape this body or this mind. You know what I mean? Shit happens, and people go through shit. You know what I mean? People are mentally put to the test day in and day out. It's 100% true. But, to show, this kind of, and this kind of, have this kind of performance against this particular opponent, and to let it get to you. It's not like Carla is some world beater. It's not like Rose Namajunas is fighting Cyborg. You know what I mean? Like she's pretty much fighting a one-dimensional fighter. Carla is a one-dimensional fighter. She's got better at that dimension. She's got better overall, and has grown physically, and has developed into like more of an athlete, and her experience in this sport has come together, in her performances. You've seen it, but she's still primarily a one-dimensional fighter. And Rose, who is not by any means a one-dimensional fighter, just couldn't get over the hump in this one mentally. I think mentally she broke down. Mentally she psyched herself out. And it's going to be interesting to see how she bounces back. How she bounces back from this. Where is she going to find that confidence? Because if she didn't have it going into this fight, I don't know how she's going to all of a sudden come out with some confidence. You know what I mean? To put on some amazing performance. I don't know. I think she can beat Carla. From what I saw from Carla, and Carla is not off the hook on this one. Carla put a horrible performance. For her to win the championship like that, I wouldn't have even put the belt around my waist. I would have given it back to Dana. I'd be like, let's just do it again. That should have been Carla's response, but she didn't. She took it and was like, "Well, no, I won. I did it. I did it. I did what I needed to do. You didn't. Well, you two also did nothing. You two were afraid of what she was going to do to you. It was by far the worst title fight in UFC history, I think. I can't think of any other ones that were just as that bad. A title fight. Um, as far as worst fight in general that I've ever seen, no, it's not. It's not the worst fight I've ever seen. There's still two talented, skilled fighters. You know what I mean? Worst fight would be. I mean, I don't know what's worse. A fight like this where people just kind of don't do anything, or a fight where the technique is just thrown out the window. And I mean, there's a couple amateurs in there. You know what I mean? I don't know which one's worse to watch, but I don't know. It was a bad look for her. I don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't look like they're looking to book the rematch right away. I mean, it might be better for Rose that they don't. Take some time off. Take the rest of the year off. Fight at the end of the year, maybe. And then reevaluate yourself. Reevaluate yourself mentally. Reevaluate your team. Your team is taking a hit right now, and I think it's a good time to just sit back and readjust and get back into it. Find your groove. Find your mental confidence. Get in there and probably beat her. You know what I mean? Rose is definitely the best in the division. She's beat Zhang Weili. She's beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And to have her lose against Carla Esparza, you know what I mean? I don't know. You know what I mean? For a while there, I was like, it was just surprising to even see Carla still in the game. You know what I mean? It was same with like Liz Carmouche, like these journey women. You know what I mean? And Carla was headed towards journey woman status. You know what I mean? She was I don't even know how you can for a while there it was how do you make a living? I would ask myself. I would see people. I would see Carla. I would see other fighters like that of that caliber, Liz Carmouche and other people like other fighters, not just women, but other fighters in general, where they're not fighting consistently. They're not fighting top competition. They're barely fighting at all. They're barely in the UFC, and they're barely maintaining their UFC contract status. And they're dragging out their contracts, and how are they making money? How are you making money? How are you making a living? Even the top fighters are barely, are complaining about fire pay. How are you guys making a living? You're not even making the money that a rookie in any of these other major league sports make. You're making below what the average of a middle class individual makes on a yearly basis. They have to be, you know what I mean? So I always question that, but to see Carla where she's at now, it's pretty crazy, man. She's 4 fights in a row, 5 fights in a row. I don't know what her record has been, man. I mean, for her to be the title holder now over Rose, this current version of Rose, it's staggering. It's mind-boggling, man. We'll see what happens, man. I don't think Carla is up to par with the other women in this division, the top tier ones. I don't think she is, and I don't think she can beat Rose if Rose beat Rose in this fight. So it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out. As far as that event goes, that's all I really want to get to on that event. The card overall was pretty interesting and pretty entertaining. I caught a little bit of the Canelo fight. That's why I don't want to talk about it too much, but that one was entertaining. You had Bellator was alright, you know what I mean? You had Bader beating Congo over in Paris. You had Yoel Romero picking up a win. It looks like they're going to set up Yoel Romero and Melvin Manhoff. But let's get into fight announcements. A couple of UFC fight announcements. Cowboy Cerrone and Joe Lauzon, which was supposed to be for 274, it was rebooked, and it's currently for UFC Austin. I think that's going to be June or July. I think it's June. UFC Austin. So that fight got rebooked. It's going to be most likely one of the two's retirement fight. It looks like Lauzon is going to take one at a time and fight here and there. Cowboy, This should be Cowboy's retirement fight. It should be a retirement fight for both of them, but it is what it is. Fighters are, have a really hard time calling it quits when things are going south. You know what? Before I move on these fight announcements, we have to talk about Michael Chandler and what's his name? Tony Ferguson. I mean, what can you say? Tony looked good in the first round, and he really did a really good job, I think, mixing it up and showing a little bit of vintage Tony to make people think like, oh shit, is Tony back? Was it just a couple of fights skid that he was having a hard time with, and he bounced back? He has a team now that's around him, and management and all this other stuff. You always hear about Tony's circumstances outside of the cage, and man, he came out strong in the first. It was a good fight. It was a good mix. It was a good scrap in the first. Even banged up Michael Chandler up a little bit, man. It was pretty interesting to see. Tony looked physically pretty in good shape, man. He looked good, man. You could see the gray in his hair now, but he looked good. I got to give him that, man. And the second round starts and clack, Michael Chandler just landing that front kick straight to his chin, knocking him out cold. Never seen that before. Where does Tony go from here? I don't know. I really don't know. If he he's got a lot of fights on his contract supposedly. He's got to fight lower competition, top 10, top 15, and see how he does. And just give him his fights, let him fight it out. And if he wins, he wins. If he loses, he loses. But his I think his time as a co-headliner or a main eventer is done. I think his time fighting top 5 competition is done. And we got to see if he's able to maintain his status in top 10 or top 15. I think that's where he's at, and I think that's where he's at in his career at the moment. And it's sad to see, but that's what happens when Father Time catches up to you. So as far as Michael Chandler, he's got a lot of options. He got out of that fight relatively unscathed. He didn't really take too much damage. He can fight Poirier. He can fight Islam. He can fight Dariush when he gets healthy. He could try to get Nate or McGregor out for a fight, but I doubt if that's going to happen. And maybe down the road he might fight Oliveira again. Who knows? Chandler's got a lot of options, man. He's 2-2 in the sport. All exciting fights in the UFC. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to him. Other fight announcements: Molly McCann, who was at 274, has a fight set for UFC London. I gotta look up her opponent, but she's got a fight set up. Man, I thought I had that here. Yeah, I don't really want to look at it. Search for that, but Molly McCann, Meatball Molly, who has a documentary coming out. It's pretty soon on BT Sports. You probably find out on YouTube. She's gonna fight on the next UFC London card, I believe, probably this summer. I'm assuming. And then we have Brandon Moreno, man. We all thought they were going to go with Davison Figueiredo. It looks like Davison might obviously got his way and is not fighting Moreno for the 4th time. It looks like they're going to put Moreno through a couple of number 1 contenders fights to see what happens. He is fighting Kai Kara France. I'm not sure when the date is set, but that is a very interesting fight. That's going to be very, very, very exciting fight. As of right now, I'd probably put my money on Kai Kara France. He comes from City Kickboxing. Those guys are super talented at game planning. Kai Kara France has all the skills in the world, especially on the feet. Brandon is durable, though, man. He's durable. He's got great boxing. He's got great jiu-jitsu. I could see him winning this fight easily too. You know what I mean? Especially if he's able to stun Kai Kara France, take it to the ground. I think he's probably a better ground tactician than Kai Kara France is. But on the feet, it's going to be very, 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 very interesting. As far as size-wise, I would think Moreno's slightly taller. But that's going to be an interesting fight. I'm really actually excited for that one. I'm excited to see Brandon Moreno outside of a Figueiredo fight, um, and let those guys get some fresh opponents. See what happens. Maybe they'll meet down the road for a fourth time, or maybe not. You know what I mean? Shit happens. And then we have this weekend. Let's get to a couple of events that we have this weekend. This weekend, May 11th, you have Invicta 47, Ducati versus Zapatella. Two fantastic fights on Invicta 47. Invicta is still doing their thing, man. They are still doing their thing. It's super interesting to see them still making their waves. And they were a big promotion at one point, but UFC just, man, took them through the cleaners, man. And they don't even go outside of Kansas City anymore. You know what I mean? That's where their home base is. They're a Kansas City promotion at this point. So we'll see. Bellator 281. Then you have Bellator 281. That's MVP versus Storley. This is going to be Bellator's return fight to London. I think this is going to be pretty fucking interesting. It's always exciting to see MVP back in action. And that, make sure you look for that. It's going to be on Showtime. Showtime, May 13th. That's going to be very, 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 very interesting. And then we have UFC on ESPN and ESPN Plus. Blachowicz. Oh, I'm saying Blachowicz still. Blojovic versus Rajcik. Alexander Rajcik. Jan Blojovic versus Alexander Rajcik. Light heavyweight bout. This is going to be very, very interesting. This is a big test for Blojovic, because if he can't get past Rakic, it's going to be very, very difficult to see him in the title contention again. Not that he can't, but at his age, at the state of the division, I mean, obviously a couple of wins, he'll probably be a number one contender again. He'll probably fight for a title again. But if he gets smoked by Rakic, who's a very talented fighter, man, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, I'm going to go with Rakic on this one. I think he's a young hut stud, man. He's a talented big guy, dude, and it's going to be very interesting. Blojovic is a big dude, great boxing, very experienced. 28-9 for Blojovic, 14-2 for Rakic. It's very interesting. You have Ion Cutelaba versus Ryan Spann. I believe that might be the co-main event. I'm not sure. You have David Grant, Louis Smolka, Caitlin Kokajian versus Amanda Ribas. Oh, one of my favorites out there. You guys all know what I mean. Frank Camacho versus Emmanuel Torres, and Jake Hadley versus Ellen Nascimento. Andrea Lee also on the card. Michael Johnson on the card. Angela Hill on the card. And Tatsuro Tairario. This guy's 10-0. Japanese fighter. I believe he's Japanese. I'm hearing a lot of things about this guy. I'm curious to see how he does. I believe this is the same person I'm thinking of. If it is, this guy, that's a fight to look out for. It's Carlos Caldelario versus Tatsuro Tahihara or Taira. It's very, I'm usually pretty good with names. Let me look at the betting lines for Blojovic versus Rakic. Blojovic is a plus 160. Blojovic is the underdog against Rakic. That's what, like I was saying, I believe Rakic is, a tough test for Blojovic, so I'm not surprised on that. Ribas versus Kokajian. Ribas is the underdog at plus 150. You have Caitlin Kokajian at minus 180. Cutelaba is a minus 220. He's a favorite over Ryan Spann, who's a plus 180. and Alan Patrick plus 120. The underdog against the favorite, Michael Johnson, at minus 150. Andrea Lee as a favorite over Vivian Araujo. Interesting. Okay. You know what? Hopefully you guys enjoyed this first episode. I can go on a little bit more, but I just wanted to get this one in the books, on in your ears, man. And this is the first of many. So this is episode number 1 of the Combat Source podcast. My name is Josh. Make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you can. YouTube, iTunes. Share this podcast with your friends. And I'm gonna be doing this on a weekly basis, man. I'm gonna. This is primarily an audio based podcast at the moment. I'm getting the studio set up. I'm getting everything set up. We're gonna get the video component and video on YouTube and all that stuff set up for you guys, and Spotify and all that, however it works. But I'm gonna get that all going for you eventually. Probably sometime, maybe by the end of the month, if not next month. I gotta get everything set up, but I want to thank you guys all for joining me on this. I look forward to the fights. Hopefully you guys do too. We'll be back next week to recap everything, see what's going on in the world of combat sports. But man, thank you guys all for joining. See you guys soon. And Meatball Molly, who has a documentary coming out pretty soon on BT Sports. You probably find out on YouTube. She's gonna fight on the next UFC London card, I believe, probably this summer, I'm assuming. And then we have Brandon Moreno, man. We all thought they were going to go with the Davison Figueiredo. It looks like Davison might obviously got his way and is not fighting Moreno for the 4th time. It looks like they're going to put Moreno through a couple of number 1 contenders fights to see what happens. He is fighting Kai Kara France. I'm not sure when the date is set, but that is a very interesting fight. That's going to be very, very, very exciting fight. As of right now, I'd probably put my money on Kai Kara France. He comes from City Kickboxing. Those guys are super talented at game planning. Kai Kara France has all the skills in the world, especially on the feet. Brandon is durable, though, man. He's durable. He's got great boxing. He's got great jiu-jitsu. I could see him winning this fight easily too. You know what I mean? Especially if he's able to stun Kai Kara France, take it to the ground. I think he's probably a better ground tactician than Kai Kara France is. But on the feet, it's going to be very, 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 very interesting. As far as size-wise, I would think Moreno's slightly taller. But that's going to be an interesting fight. I'm really actually excited for that one. I'm excited to see Brandon Moreno outside of a Figueiredo fight. And let those guys get some fresh opponents, see what happens. Maybe they'll meet down the road for a 4th time, or maybe not. You know what I mean? Shit happens. And then we have this weekend. Let's get to a couple of events that we have this weekend. This weekend, May 11th, you have Invicta 47, Ducati versus Zapatella. 2 fantastic fights on Invicta 47. Invicta is still doing their thing, man. They are still doing their thing. It's super interesting to see them still making their waves. And they were a big promotion at one point, but the UFC just, man, took them through the cleaners, man. And they don't even go outside of Kansas City anymore. You know what I mean? That's where their home base is. They're a Kansas City promotion at this point. So we'll see. Bellator 281. Then you have Bellator 281. That's MVP versus Storley. This is going to be Bellator's return fight to London. I think this is going to be pretty fucking interesting. It's always exciting to see MVP back in action. And That make sure you look for that. It's gonna be on Showtime. Showtime, May 13th. That's gonna be very, 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 very interesting. And then we have UFC on ESPN and ESPN Plus. Blachowicz. Oh, I'm saying Blachowicz still. Blojovic versus Rajcik. Alexander Rajcik. Jan Blojovic versus Alexander Rajcik. Light heavyweight bout. This is going to be very, very interesting. This is a big test for Blojovic, because if he can't get past Rakic, it's going to be very, very difficult to see him in the title contention again. Not that he can't, but at his age, at the state of the division, I mean, obviously a couple of wins, he'll probably be a number one contender again. He'll probably fight for a title again. But if he gets smoked by Rakic, who's a very talented fighter, man, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, I'm going to go with Rakic on this one. I think he's a young hut stud, man. He's a talented, big guy, dude. And it's going to be very interesting. Blojovic is a big dude. Great boxing. Very experienced. 28-9 for Blojovic. 14-2 for Rakic. It's very interesting. You have Ion Cutelaba versus Ryan Spann. I believe that might be the co-main event. I'm not sure. You have David Grant, Louis Smoka, Caitlin Kokajian versus Amanda Ribas. Oh, one of my favorites out there. You guys all know what I mean. Frank Camacho versus Emmanuel Torres, and Jake Hadley versus Ellen Nascimento. Andrea Lee also on the card. Michael Johnson on the card. Angela Hill on the card. And Tatsuro Tairo. This guy's 10-0. Japanese fighter. I believe he's Japanese. I'm hearing a lot of things about this guy. I'm curious to see how he does. I believe this is the same person I'm thinking of. If it is, this guy, that's a fight to look out for. It's Carlos Caldelario versus Tatsuro Tahihara or Taira. It's very, I'm usually pretty good with names. Let me look at the betting lines for Blojovic versus Rakic. Blojovic is a plus 160. Blachowicz the underdog against Rakic. That's what, like I was saying, I believe Rakic is, a tough test for Blojovic, so I'm not surprised on that. Ribas versus Kokajian. Ribas is the underdog at plus 150. You have Caitlin Kokajian at minus 180. Cutelaba is a minus 220. He's a favorite over Ryan Spann, who's a plus 180. And Alan Patrick plus 120. The underdog against the favorite, Michael Johnson, at minus 150. Andrea Lee is a favorite over Vivian Araujo. Interesting. Okay. You know what? Hopefully you guys enjoyed this first episode. I can go on a little bit more, but I just wanted to get this one in the books, on in your ears, man. And this is the first of many. So this is episode number 1 of the Combat Source podcast. My name is Josh. Make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you can. YouTube, iTunes. Share this podcast with your friends. And I'm gonna be doing this on a weekly basis, man. I'm gonna. This is primarily an audio based podcast at the moment. I'm getting the studio set up. I'm getting everything set up. We're gonna get the video component and video on YouTube and all that stuff set up for you guys, and Spotify and all that, however it works. But I'm gonna get that all going for you eventually. Probably sometime, maybe by the end of the month, if not next month. I got to get everything set up, but I want to thank you guys all for joining me on this. I look forward to the fights. Hopefully you guys do too. We'll be back next week to recap everything, to see what's going on in the world of combat sports. And until then, enjoy all the fights. All the fights, man. Enjoy them all. I don't know what my end outro is going to be, man. I don't know what's going to be yet, but man, thank you guys all for joining. See you guys soon.